Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 5 of the Survival Project. Today I have a lady with me, Louise Duffy, who's going to speak to us about her lived experience of living with MS. So, floor is yours, Louise. If you'd just like to tell us a little intro to your own story and your life with MS.
My name's Louise, like you said. I'm 33. Been living with MS for just over 8 years now. So I was diagnosed when 5 days before my 25th birthday, I was officially diagnosed. I had some symptoms for probably like 6 months previous to this, but obviously it's the HSE, it's Ireland, like things take time to be diagnosed. So my first symptoms started May 2017. I was working in a shoe shop at the time. So I was lifting a lot of boxes, carrying a lot of stock, usual kind of retail stuff. I woke up one day and I had pins and needles in my hand. And I said to my mum, it's a bit weird, isn't it? Like my hand's a bit numb, like with a bit pins and needles in my hand. And she was like, all right. And the girls in work was like, oh, maybe it's carpal tunnel from lifting all the boxes. And I was like, well, that makes sense. Like, what else would it be? Obviously, it made sense, it could be carpal tunnel, it could be whatever, trapped nerve. Like that was kind of where my mind was going because it wouldn't have gone anywhere else. And then it slowly kind of moved up my arm, my left arm. And it is generally with MS when people are diagnosed, they generally get symptoms when they get numbness and stuff like that. They generally get symptoms on their left side. So, which obviously I didn't know at the time, but so my left arm went numb and then my whole left side went numb. That was over probably the course of maybe 3 or 4 weeks. It just progressively got worse. And then I went to A&E because it's not normal for a 24-year-old to be getting these symptoms. And the lack of care was ridiculous. Like I waited for 4 hours and the doctor literally said, does that feel the same on both hands? And I said, no. And at this stage, I had no feeling in my left hand. So it just had gotten progressively worse. And I said, no. And he said, okay, you're fine. Bye. And that was it. I was going to Chicago 3 days later with my best friend. And I suppose young me was like, great. I went to A&E. That's fine. I've been told I don't need to worry about this. So I'm not going to worry about it. So I went to Chicago and I was lying in the bed with my best friend and I just said, like, I can't feel the sheet on my left side of my stomach. And I was just like, this is just no, like can't be right. And then at that stage, I was getting like a vibration down the back of my spine. So every time I moved my head, even slightly, it would be this complete vibration that would almost paralyze you down your spine. It didn't hurt in any way, but it would just that shock. I remember saying to people, put your hand on my spine, can you feel that? And they were like, no. And I'm like, no, I swear. And it messes with your mind, like, because it's like, no, there's definitely something there. And like I said, sometimes it would actually it would take your breath away. You'd feel paralyzed by it. And I'd be like, what? I was just like, what? So this is in Chicago, obviously America, like their healthcare system. I'm not going to A&E in America. Like I was like, I'll just ride it out. I was working in retail. I'm not going to, I can't afford that. We paid it back for the rest of my life. No. So I said to my mom, will you make me a GP appointment? Went to my GP literally straight off the plane. She is an earth angel. Still my GP. She's the best woman ever, in my opinion. She told me after she knew straight away it was MS. But obviously, like, there's no blood test, she couldn't say that. But she did say, I would really recommend you paying to go and see a neurologist. Like, don't wait. And I was like, okay, yeah. Like, yeah, how much is it, neurologist? Yeah, I'll go. Like, thinking. And got blood tests that day, went to see a neurologist a couple of weeks later, I think. And then got a lumbar puncture to confirm, which is, have you ever had a lumbar puncture? I'm sure it's
I've heard about them
not
now.
great. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend.
No, look.
No. Avoid it if you can. And an MRI. So my MRI basically lit up and I went into the neurologist appointment and he was a really old man, but he was really lovely. But I remember the way he had his computer angled, I could just see my MRI. And obviously to me, I'm an untrained person. I thought, oh, I have brain tumors. Like they look like brain tumors. I don't know what he said. He spoke for maybe a half an hour. My mum was with me. He spoke for about half an hour, and I just said, "Can I just stop you? Like, what is that? What is that? My MRI? What's that on my brain?" And he was just like, "Yeah, yeah, like we'll get to that now," and continued to speak for another 15 minutes or something. I was just like, "Oh my God, please, please speak. Tell me what it is." Like, anyway, he ended up obviously saying it was MS. I knew nothing about MS. My nanny's neighbor has MS and she walks with a cane. That was the level of knowledge that I had. So I'm just about to be 25. Like there was nothing. I knew nothing about it. And so he set me off with 38 steroids a day.
Oh my God, that is a
Yeah.
lot of steroids.
Yeah. So so the only treatment, it's not really a treatment, obviously, but the only treatment they have to combat an active relapse is steroids. So at that time, I took the steroids because why wouldn't I take the steroids? I ended up getting like a massive reaction to them. I broke out in steroid acne. I couldn't taste, I was tasting metal. Like every bad symptom you can get with steroids, I got it. And I kind of thought, I was like, I had night sweats. I thought to myself, this is MS. I didn't realize that this was the steroids, and your mind races and you're like, how am I going to live like this for the rest of my life? We came off the steroids.
Oh, before you today, I spoke to him. He referred to them as the devil's Tic Tacs. They're just
Oh my,
horrendous. Yeah, when you get the symptoms out of them, like obviously they are a necessity and they fix
yeah,
the issue you're having a hand on one side, but 9 times out of 10, from my own experience, they cause a lot of other issues. Now they get you out of a flare maybe and stuff like that, but you really went through it. My God, the taste
yeah.
and the acne
So
and
the
the
MS nurse says to me, at the time, because I remember saying like, "Why am I not getting better here?" And she's really amazing. But she said to me, "Well, technically, you've had 3 relapses, one after the other." So she said, like, there's relapsing and remitting MS, there's primary progressive MS and secondary progressive MS. And she said, you have relapsing and remitting MS, but she said you've highly active relapsing and remitting MS, which like everybody generally is diagnosed with relapsing and remitting MS when they're diagnosed. And then as your disease progresses, that's when, unless like you're really people that are kind of older, I found like people that are diagnosed later in life in their 40s and their 50s, and their MS has probably been progressing, but it's like not been outwardly visible, so, and they're generally some of the people that will end up in a wheelchair, not all the time, obviously, but in a wheelchair, bedbound, etc. But she was saying, like, your MS is so highly active, we need to get on this quickly to prevent anything else.
with MS symptoms, are they, is your MS active long before the symptoms kind of start, or is once
Yeah.
the MS starts, oh, they are, okay. So
Yeah.
it's pretty
So I
much slow.
had 6 lesions on my brain and one was quite big. So that's what they said. Like, I suppose the bigger symptoms would be the ones that would be more concerning. People go blind temporarily. That a lot of people suffer with optic issues, and that's where a lot of people are diagnosed. It's generally, from what I've found, is optic issues or numbness or, some sort of like vibration down the spine or something kind of bigger that would make you actively look at what's going on here. Whereas other smaller things, you could like memory issues or tripping and stuff like that, that you wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, there's something wrong with me here. It could just be like, oh, I didn't sleep well the past couple of nights or whatever. You could put it down to plenty of other things.
Yeah, some of the symptoms, I'd say you can obviously say you could link it to different things that are going on in your life, as you said. Because I know when I did my own little bit of research about MS, there's so many different ways it can affect you. Like, my God,
Mm.
chronic fatigue and the vibration down your spine. I just want to look back to when you were saying you were experiencing that symptom and other people were saying they couldn't feel it. How did that make you feel? Because obviously you're kind of thinking, am I just imagining this? Like, what is going on? I'm experiencing these symptoms, but no one else is kind of getting what I'm going through. How was it? Was that hard? Like, I suppose to come around what you were going through.
I suppose because it was so unusual. Like, it's not something that, like, can you feel that bone sticking out there? Or, what, it was just so alien to me that, like, my spine is vibrating. Why is my spine vibrating? Like,
It's very,
it,
yeah, yeah.
huh?
It's such a scary symptom to experience because, like, obviously,
Yeah, like really, like I put that up there with, going blind in one eye. Like I would imagine it's at that level of, oh my God, what is going on here? So it does definitely mess with your head. But I was just like, I just need to figure this out. Like, what's going on? We need to do something here.
and how extreme have the symptoms been for you since diagnosis? I know you've shared quite a lot of them there. Has there been any other things that have kind of come up?
So I suppose my symptoms are quite managed now with the treatment that I'm on. Like daily, like more frequent symptoms would be, they call it an MS hug. So it's when the muscles between your rib cage spasm. That's quite uncomfortable, and it's probably one of the more uncomfortable ones because it can definitely take your breath away, and it can make you feel like you can't get a full breath in. Generally, that's helped with a hot water bottle, anti-inflammatory tablets, things like that. And more annoying ones would be like popping. It feels like bubbles are popping on the soles of your feet.
Oof.
That's annoying. Like, it feels like spiders are running up your legs. Like, all of these are obviously like your nerves are misfiring. They're really strange sensations. And I suppose now I'm kind of used to just being like, ooh, and then just moving on. Because they don't inhibit my day. MS hug more so would. Like, there would be times where I'd be like, okay, I just need to go and lie down because you just kind of need to let it pass. There's not really more than like your little tips and tricks that you pick up over the time. There's not a whole lot more you can do.
You know yourself, as you've learned probably over the last couple of years, sometimes you're going to have to take the time and deal with it and go to bed for a little bit. Do you find, I know you're saying you're in a good spell now at the minute. How long did it take you from diagnosis to kind of get into this good spell and find, I suppose, a
Oh, a long time. A
long
long
time?
time. It took me a few years. I think both mentally and physically, it took me like a long time. I don't think at the time I realized how much of a toll it was taking on my mental health. And I think I'm paying for that a bit now. Like looking back, I actually did go through these things and these were big issues. And I'm very much like, oh yeah, that happened, right. Move on. Next. Like, let's keep going. I'm very much that type of a person. But I think the older I'm getting, the more I'm like, okay, you need to acknowledge it and accept it and deal with it because it's going to come back to bite you in the arse if you don't, really.
Uh, Yeah, like I think when we go through these things and issues with health, they do leave a mark every time. And like as a part of just resilient and getting through it, you kind of put it to the back of your head and you move on because you have to deal with it every day now, here and now.
But it's
Um,
survival, though. You do it to survive.
Completely. It's coping mechanism. Like, it's a complete necessity you have to do to get through the day. And now that you're saying these kind of things are coming up for you, what do you do? Like I know myself, my own health experiences. The physical is what you experience in the moment. The mental is what you deal with a couple of months or years down the line. What are you kind of doing to help your own mental health at the minute and kind of help get through everything that you've gone through?
Well, I've recently started counseling again. I went to counseling, um, I was probably maybe a year diagnosed or something. And I went and I remember thinking, I don't need to talk to you about this. Like, I'm grand. Why am I here? Why am I wasting my money talking to you? And like naivety, stupidity, survival, all of those things could be reason for it. But I, and maybe I just simply wasn't ready to talk about it, and acknowledge like the damage that's done mentally, physically. And that's okay, I suppose. But I do think like find someone to talk to and talk to them.
Yeah. Like I suppose you can only open that door when you're ready to open the door. If you'll know yourself when it's time to go and work on the mental side of things because we can always exist in, I don't call it robot mode, but we have to be very present in the moment to deal with the symptoms we're dealing with. So when you have to go and face it and take time, that can be very mentally challenging and also quite physically challenging. Like when you're working through the kind of mental issues, they can really drain you physically.
Yeah.
And then you're
Yeah.
thinking, am I tired because I'm sick or am I tired because I've just tried to work through a load of these mental things that have come up?
100%. Yeah. It's kind of hard to pick it out, like, what are you tired from exactly?
And do you help manage symptoms? Is there exercises that are quite good or is it all just kind of mainly tackled with medication?
So, exercise is kind of difficult for me because depending on where I am during my treatment, depends on how much energy I have. My treatment's every 6 weeks, it's an infusion, so I find kind of a week and a half, 2 weeks after I get it, it's still kicking in. The 2 weeks, the middle 2 weeks are great, and then the last 2 weeks are not great. So like trying to exercise within that time frame and trying to find something that works is just difficult. It's just really difficult. And I suppose like I do want to do something for myself, exercise wise. Obviously, you need to exercise just in general, but
Yep.
keep the body as good as, and like, I do like, it is kind of on my mind that if God forbid I do have another relapse, like I'd like to be the healthiest possible in order to bounce back as quickly as possible. I know that that's not necessarily the case, like MS will do whatever it wants to do, but like it's just trying to maintain it. I suppose I try to eat as healthy as possible. Obviously, I love a snack now. Love a takeaway. Just trying to just overall be healthy as possible. And like when I feel good, exercise, when I don't, about listening to your body and not pushing yourself too hard. I'm a special needs assistant, so I am on the go all day
Okay.
as it
That's
is. So
yeah, I'm sure that's a physically taxing job in its own sense, and especially is fatigue an issue for you with the
yeah,
MS?
fatigue could be an issue. Yeah.
That's the hard thing when your job is physical and you're tired as well. To be like, I know myself when I'm tired, concentration levels go out the window. I can't even if I have a task at hand, I have to just be like, oh, I can't focus on it. How do you find tackling work when your symptoms are active?
Yeah, it can be difficult because especially kids I work with would be kind of more profound special needs.
Okay.
Not all of them, but some of them, and you have to be on it. Like, you have to be alert at all times for their safety and for your own safety. So that can be taxing on those days. And some days I just come home and I can't move off the couch, and like physically can't move. It's not just, oh, I'm wrecked. It's like, no, no, I need to go and not move now for at least an hour or two and just try to get a bit of energy back, I suppose.
That's pure fatigue. You just kind of have to take a sit back, sit on the couch, and all right, I'll get up when I can.
It's fatigue when you actually aren't able to move, even if you want to.
You can feel it in your bones. You're like, flop yourself on the couch.
Yeah.
With the medication you're on, is there a few different options? I know with IBD, there's a few different options, and it can be a lot of trial and error and find the one that works for you. Is it the same with MS, or is there more of a kind of straight line to it?
Yeah, no, there's a few. So when I was diagnosed, I was given an option of four, and the neurologist and an MS nurse spoke to me about the four different options. And I was just like, under the impression at the time, you tell me what's the best one for me. And they were like, nope, that's on you. You have to decide. And I was like, okay. So the two of them literally sat there with me and was like, okay, so the side effects to each. And I was like, okay, great. Like, um, this was previous to me knowing crazy side effects about things, like innocent 25-year-old me was like, okay. So there was one injection that you gave yourself. I think it's weekly or something. One that you take two tablets a day. One you was really old, and they did say we probably wouldn't recommend this because your MS is quite active. It probably wouldn't give you the best chances of not having a relapse. So I was like, okay. That was kind of the only bit of guidance they gave me, I would say. And then the injection, they said that comes with a risk of cancer. And I was like, okay, skin cancer to be precise. And I said, okay. And they said, I said, how do you manage that? Like, what's the word? Like, how do you monitor that is what I asked. And they said, you count how many freckles and moles you have. And every month you count them. And if you have more or if they've changed, you come back to us. I was like, I'm ginger, as are you. So yeah. So I was like, in the summer, I'll have 100 more freckles. Like, what are we doing here? So that was like my mind blew then. I was like, that's not an option. That's
Mm.
not That's not how you monitor something. Like, I'm sure they have other ways, but this was literally word for word what the neurologist said to me. I was like, this is fucking mad. Like, this can't be actually what you're telling me.
Am I really hearing this? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then they suggested Trisabri, which was at the time the latest um, treatment that was available in Ireland. And at the time, it was given every 4 weeks through a IV drip. Now it's every 6 weeks, but at the time, it was every 4 weeks. And they said, so it comes with very little side effects other than this kind of main side effect, an infection that can go to your brain and it can ultimately kill you. So the chances of survival are less than 10% if you do end up with this virus. The chances of this virus are rare. And I think that's kind of what, as scary as it is, obviously, I don't want to die, it's probably not going to happen. So they test for this virus every 6 months. And as soon as you test positive, you're only allowed on that treatment, on Trisabri, for 2 more years. Me personally, I think if I ever tested positive for it, I'd be like, take me off it now. Because that's in my brain, that's when, and I suppose this is probably how I've made peace with it, that when I'm negative for this virus that can help or cause the infection, as long as I'm negative, I'm safe. But the minute I'm positive, I've kind of said to myself, I'm going to come off it and I'll move on. And like in the past 8 years, there is other treatments that have come out. So it's not no longer my only option.
Yeah, the previous guest, Sarah O'Connor, said, yeah, she quoted that you have to deal with the shark that's closest to the boat. And for the time being, the medication that you're on is fixing or alleviating the symptoms that you're experiencing. And if further down the line, you have to change the approach, obviously, you have to deal with the shark closest to the boat. So very
Yeah.
understandable. But there's definitely a massive anxiety, I imagine, with having that at the back of your mind thinking, and how regularly do you have to go for tests for that virus?
So you get it every 6 months.
Every 6 months. Okay. So I
Yeah.
suppose in the lead up to those 6 months, you're kind of waiting, oh, am I going to be okay the next time, sort of thing? Like, it must be very hard to always be having that extra bit of worry on top of it. Like,
Yeah. I get blood tests every 6 weeks that I go, but I kind of know in my head, okay, November is the test for the JC virus. And that's kind of the only one that I'd ever be like, it's coming. Like, oh,
yeah,
and it's the only one I'll ever ask about. Obviously, the girls are great, the nurses are great, and they'll tell you like your white blood cells are a bit high or a bit low or whatever from the last blood tests. But it's the one that I'll be like, did my JC virus come back yet? Did it come? Like, that's the one thing I kind of not care about, but it's the most important one, really, to me.
yeah. And kind of avoiding viruses is something we try to do on a daily basis to keep ourselves healthy. But this specific virus, is there any steps that you can take to make sure that you limit contact with it, or
No,
no, just
no.
it's potluck?
Not that I know of anyway, I must look into that. No, I don't think there is. I just think like it's just is what it is. I think like you could have it and it will never affect you. It's not a virus that will give you any symptoms, to my knowledge anyway.
When they first told you about these possible side effects, I know myself from when I was first diagnosed, my mother was the one that dealt with all the possible side effects and stuff like that, and I buried my head in the sand because when she even tried to explain to me, I didn't want to know. I was like, out of sight, out of mind. If I know it exists, I'll be making it out in my head that it could happen to me, you know. So that you feel like you might manifest it by knowing what it is. You kind of have to take charge of your own health issues. So
Mm.
when you find out that there are these really extreme possible side effects, it's a lot to take into account when you're deciding on medication. How did you deal with it? Like, I suppose mentally thinking, okay, I have to make a choice here. And how did you weigh up your options? Was there any kind of process you went through there?
I sat down with my mom and we kind of done a list of pros and cons, really. I will say, I think I did bury my head in the sand for a few days and I was just like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. Because they send you away with a pamphlet for each. And I was just like, yeah, not now, not yet. But also the other side of my brain was like, you need to be on a treatment ASAP. Let's go pick something. I definitely did have that bury my head in the sand, but also get your arse into gear a little bit, like pick something. So I think the pros and cons were like writing them out and physically seeing them. But in reality, thinking back on it, the other three drugs were not really options for me because of the skin cancer thing. I am a redhead. I am more susceptible to being to burning and everything else. Like that would probably riddle me with anxiety more than PML, like the brain infection would ever, because I just think it like in my mind it's so rare. Whereas I have heard of many people getting skin cancer because of that treatment. It just was never an option. And the other two were much older and much less effective. And I didn't love the idea of injecting myself every day and having like the sore sites and having all the, all the symptoms that come with that. Like I just saw, I'll go to the hospital once a month in a nice comfy chair. Someone can do it for me. And it's worked out well kind of since.
Yeah. That idea of injecting yourself every day is very hard. I never have an issue with needles when someone else is sticking me with them, but when I have to do it myself, it's hard. It's very hard. Now, I did obviously you get better over the years. Practice makes perfect, but it's still not something you'll ever enjoy. Just to circle back to that, like obviously you got diagnosed, you said yourself, buried your head in the sand, and then to give yourself a bit of pep talk, get your arse in gear. What advice would you give to someone else who finds himself in that same situation?
Yeah, I'd say to people, feel your feelings. Like your feelings are valid, but just don't live there. Don't live in the feelings. Like at the end of the day, these treatments are treatments for a reason. They are going to help. And if they don't help, there's something else that will help. Like we are very lucky in a way, that we live when we do, because not so long ago, people with MS were put in a bed and they died. You know what I mean? And it's probably similar with Crohn's and similar with so many other diseases. Like, we are very lucky. And I know of people that completely buried their head in the sand and didn't go on treatments. And I know treatments are not for everybody and people have their own reasons for that. And that is okay. And people try fix their MS with diet and stuff. And I am an advocate for healthy eating with MS. And I do think like diet is great, but a diet cannot fix a neurological problem. Like not alone, like it just simply can't. Because if it could, then I would be doing it. That's what I'd say. I would say, feel your feelings, but pick something and it'll be worth it.
And when you were initially diagnosed, did you turn straight to the internet, or how did you kind of go looking for information of MS itself?
Yeah. So I went to the internet, found a girl. She's called Tripping on Air on Instagram. She has primary progressive MS. She's Canadian. She is hilarious. So that kind of helped. I have a very dry sense of humor. She had a very dry sense of humor. I lived off her blogs. Like I loved them. And she recently just released a book, awfully sad, but it's also very informative. And, there's people, I suppose it depends where you look on the internet. The internet is a wild place for anything. And if you look up your symptoms, they're going to tell you the worst case. But I would find people that you relate to in a way you get some joy out of as well. There's plenty of people with MS on the internet. Some of them are terrible, some of them are great.
I find there's a lot of creators in the IBD space as well, and you really have to find the people that align with like your own. As you said, you have a dry sense of humor. You find the people that you're going to find funny and speak your language, because it can nearly make the situation seem worse if you're listening to people that you don't want to be listening to, and you're thinking, "Oh God." So yeah, definitely finding your tribe online is the way to go.
Yeah. Start, I was looking through people, you know, people that, can't walk. And saying that girl tripped on air, she's very, very limited in her walking, but it's not her whole personality. You know what I mean? And I think she's really good like that it's not her life. And she's said it, like she's said a couple of times in different things, like, I hate when people ask me what do I do for work, because that's not me. I do plenty of other things. And I think like that's quite, and at the time when I wasn't working because of MS, like that really resonated with me. So you need to find things that resonate with you.
Completely. I suppose when you look to other people who are experiencing it, you can learn so much from them, and you can see how they've navigated going through it. You know
Yeah.
what plan they've put in place to get through it, and you can take the tips and put them into your own life. So it's great to find the right people to learn from, and especially you coming on here today and sharing your experience. I think the more we share, the easier it gets for absolutely everyone to endure a lot of this, and a lot of it is enduring, because
Mm.
unfortunately all of the chronic illness is a horrible situation to be in. But when it
Yeah, it's a
comes to,
beast.
yeah, it's a beast, exactly. Beast that constantly rearing its ugly head you have to try and tame. When it comes to living with MS, what's kind of, a lot of people would be able to hear about the symptoms and be able to read about the symptoms, but how has it, I suppose, shaped your life and your future plans?
I suppose it's it has to change your life because you have to adapt with MS. You know, you have to adapt to any kind of chronic illness that you have. You have to be open to change and willing to change. It can change within a day, it can change within a week, you know. Like I could wake up tomorrow theoretically and not be able to walk or not be able to see. And as much as that is terrible, like you have to kind of make your peace with it slightly. Like you have to be like, okay, if that happens, it's terrible, but there's plans in place. Like there's people that you can go to, there's things to do. Although, sidetrack, but although a neurologist once said to me, not my main neurologist, but a neurologist once said to me, don't ever go to A&E with MS on the weekends or after 5 o'clock. And I said, why? And he said, because there won't be a neurologist on call to see you. And I said, do you not have neurologists after 5 o'clock or on the weekends? And he said, yeah, we do, but they're for like, he said his direct quote was, they're for more important people with strokes.
That just sounds so ludicrous. I can't believe those words were uttered out of a health professional's mouth, which must have been like it was my disease 9 to 5. Like
That's a I said to him, okay, so I'll tell my MS to not flare up after 5 or on the weekends.
that is beyond frustrating, and like that must have obviously put you in a situation thinking like, oh my God, I can only get sick in between these hours. Like that's
Yeah.
just a horrible thought process to be in.
And it's
Um,
kind of a really scary thing to think when you really think about it, because what if, God forbid, I woke up and couldn't see out of my left eye on a Friday evening or something? What if it just happened like that? And it can. It can be that quick. It just doesn't give, it does no signs or symptoms sometimes of a big flare up.
and that bedside manner to me is appalling, because if your symptoms do become quite problematic outside of the 9 to 5 working hours, that's now another worry you have on top. Whereas before, if you hadn't heard that sentence, you say, I have to go to A&E, I have to go and seek the help. Whereas now you're just thinking, I'm experiencing this. Is there any point in me even going to A&E? Like
Yeah.
that's quite damaging statement, and can make, like, if you don't go and seek the help you need, obviously your symptoms could progress and get worse. Something that could have been alleviated if you've been able to go and get the help that you needed at the time.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. How has
And I
your
mean, the sooner the better. You know, the sooner you go, the sooner that those steps can be put in place. And I've also had another neurologist ask me about my symptoms. And I think I was only maybe a year or two diagnosed at the time. I was a year diagnosed because I was 26. And he said, I told him off my symptoms, and he said, you know, not everything is MS. And I said, so if I was a healthy 26-year-old, what would you be telling me why my symptoms are like this? What would you be telling me is wrong with me? And he didn't have an answer. I suppose I haven't had like the most fabulous. So like my main neurologist, Dr. Roisin Lonergan in the Mater, is an absolute angel. She is an amazing person. All the nurses that I've ever dealt with in the Mater are amazing people. But the neurologists, I would say, on a whole, have a lack of empathy and a lack of bedside manner. And obviously their bread and butter is Parkinson's and strokes and stuff, but MS is still very real.
so unbelievably frustrating to think that your experience is being minimalized because you're not fitting into the box of Parkinson's or a stroke, and just because you can't seek the help or aren't deserving of the help that you need. That's appalling things to have to listen to and experience. From your experience of that in the healthcare system, what changes would you like to see? Because obviously the lack of empathy there, that's that's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's wild. And another neurologist that I saw, I questioned him about Trisabri a couple of years ago. My last neurology appointment, I questioned him about they're bringing in an injection version of Trisabri, so you won't have to sit and get a IV drip for a couple of hours, so it'll be much quicker and stuff. So I questioned him about it, and he said, "That's not it. That's not a thing." And I said, "Oh no, it is a thing. Like it's in England at the moment." And he said, "No, no, I think you're wrong." And I said, "No, I'm definitely correct. I know." Because obviously I keep up to date with Trisabri because it's keeping me very much alive. So I said, "No, no, I am definitely sure that this is what it is." And he was like, "No, no, no, you're wrong." And I think it was because he had a student in with him at the time, and he hadn't heard that there was this new thing. And the following year, I was offered the injection version of Trisabri, and it was actually Dr. Roisin Lonigan that offered it to me, and I said, "Yeah, and your colleague was so rude to me." And I made her aware of it. And I said, "He completely disregarded me and told me that blah, blah, blah," and she was shocked. Like, I don't think MS is taken very seriously within the, neurology realm,
That's
and I also think that the only way to see if your MS is progressing, like I said, I had like 6 lesions on my brain, and probably only 1 or 2 of them were outward symptoms. So the only way to see if your MS is progressing or not is to get an MRI. I haven't had an MRI. You're supposed to get an MRI every year. I haven't had one in almost 3 years. So next month I'm paying private to go and get an MRI for myself because I don't want to wait another year to see if I will get an appointment on the public system. And I just think that that is so broken because that is the only way people with MS can tell if their MS is progressing or not until it's too late. Until they have the symptoms, until, like I could have an MRI tomorrow and have new lesions, and it would mean that Trisabri is no longer working for me and I need to go on to a different treatment, which is fine. But at least I know that before something big happens and it's essentially ruining my life for a period of time, at least ruining my life. Or it could be affecting the way I walk for the rest of my life. So I just think the fact that they don't prioritize people with MS to get MRI yearly is a joke.
That's a very destructive lack of care because obviously if you're not keeping on top of symptoms or lesions that might be appearing over the course of the last 3 years, that, as you said, might be a sign that the medication you're on isn't working, and that's leaving a massive hole in your care. And now
Yeah,
you take on the financial burden of going to pay for it yourself. And I imagine that's not going to be cheap.
1,000.
Oh my God, that's you having to advocate for your own health and do the things that you need to do to make sure that you can live your life the best possible way you can. But that
Yeah,
is financially, that's a real kick to take. Like that's your holiday, that's your self care. The amount of things you could do with that €1,000, which you
yeah.
should be through the system and through the care that you're looking for. That's
And
ridiculous.
it's purely because I'm so sick of waiting. Like I rang up the MRI department in the Matter and I asked her, and she was like, "You're nowhere near the top of the list," was her direct quote.
That is just, I'm kind of lost for words, to be honest. You're going through something that progressively can get worse. And the fact that you're not a priority makes no sense to me. Like, there's a serious issue with the healthcare system in this country. And like what you've just said there just kind of sums it all up, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
it's very, very frustrating. And now you have to go and spend your own hard earned money to go and
Yeah.
advocate for yourself. What advice could you give to someone else who might find themselves in the same situation as you? Like from listening to you speak, you're well able to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself, which isn't easy to do, especially when someone is telling you that you're wrong, like very openly denying what you're speaking about. What advice would you give to someone else who kind of finds it hard to stand up for themselves?
Like, I haven't always been, I suppose, the biggest advocate for my own health. Do you know what I mean? Like, me at 24 going to A&E when I was first diagnosed, I should have stood up for myself. And I think that probably has had an impact on how I deal with my health, because then if I had have gotten a diagnosis that, or been taken seriously then, I should say, I could have been on less steroids at that time, because I didn't have the vibration down my spine, and my whole torso wasn't numb at the time, you know? So I could have prevented, well, to me, maybe I couldn't have, but, you know, to me at the time, I could have prevented it. So I think that's kind of given me a kick to stand up for myself when it comes to my health. And at the end of the day, I know people find it difficult to stand up for themselves. And I really do appreciate that, especially when you're standing up to people who think they know more than you, but it's your life and it's your illness and you're living it, and they're not. Just because they have a piece of paper and just because they are qualified to give you a certain treatment or not, doesn't make them know your illness more than you do. You know your illness the best. You know your body more than anybody else does. And you just have to open your mouth sometimes. And sometimes the people that shout the loudest are heard.
Completely, like, you stand up for yourself is a massive part of living with chronic illness, because you are the most important person to you. You have to completely put yourself first in all these situations, because if you don't open your mouth and, as you said, sometimes get quite loud if you have to, people can disregard you.
And it's
Definitely.
so shit that people that are going through chronic illnesses have to do that, because I do understand how terribly you feel when you're at a point where you're speaking to a neurologist or a doctor, or you're in A&E and you're in pain, or you're fatigued, or whatever symptom you're having at the time. Like, I do appreciate that is the worst time to have to stand up for yourself, but also it's the best time to stand up for yourself, because you just have to.
You're sick, you're tired, you're vulnerable. Can be a very hard place to stand up for yourself. But as you said there, it's just a place you really have to. And practice makes perfect. The first time you stand up for yourself makes the second time you stand up for yourself a lot easier. When it comes to living with an invisible illness, do you find that you have to explain yourself to a lot more people, rather than just find that they accept you when you say that you can't make a night out or for work and things like that? Do you feel you have to really explain your symptoms? Would they say things like, "But you look fine"?
Yeah, I get you look fine a lot, which I suppose is a compliment, you know, like, I don't want someone to say, "Oh, Jesus, you look terrible," which I have gotten as well. But, yeah, like, it can be difficult. I don't really go out. Like, I don't go out drinking an awful lot anymore, because, you know, you find yourself what works and what doesn't for your body over time. And I find if I go out on a mad night out, I will pay for it for a week, fatigue-wise and leg pain and stuff like that. So it's just not worth it really to me anymore. And, like, people might think, "Oh, she just doesn't go out." Like, and that's fine. And some people I'll explain it to, and some people I won't explain it to. It kind of depends who you are in my life. I don't love having to tell people, like, "Oh, I've MS." It's not a great thing to tell people. But I suppose the more you say it, the easier it becomes to say,
Yeah.
and to hear the responses. "Oh, you look grand," or, "Oh, I know somebody that has MS and they're fine." I'm like, "That's great, but you don't really know them."
Yeah, it's very, because people can have preconceived notions of what a disease is, and then they
Yeah.
can come with outlandish statements, and you can nearly try not to be insulted or whatever. But obviously, people don't understand. They're trying to resonate with you and trying to I suppose, just have no
Relate. Yeah.
relate. Exactly, yeah. So
Yeah.
it is very hard for people when they don't understand. But that's why I think coming on and speaking like today is just a great way for people listening to, that if there's anyone in their own life who's experiencing MS, they do have an understanding, or kind of a look behind the curtain to see what life is like living through it.
That's it, because, you know, a lot of MS, you see people in wheelchairs. When you see MS, you see the kind of more extreme sides of MS, whereas obviously I go to the hospital every 6 weeks and I see every walk of life, you know, man, woman, young, old. Most of those people you would walk by on the street and never think anything of it. And even the ones that would be slightly more progressive in their MS, or progressed in their MS, I should say, you know, maybe walk slightly slower, or, you know, have a little bit more of a drop foot than others, you still wouldn't think like that person is disabled, or, you know, you wouldn't go there. Whereas I think, there needs to be more variety of MS because MS is a spectrum. You can have nothing or everything.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Like yourself coming on here, looking healthy and speaking about what MS is, because I know my own preconceived notion of what MS is someone in a wheelchair, someone who's physically quite vulnerable or disabled for the lack of a better. Because I've only ever had experience of meeting one woman who had quite degenerative MS when I was quite young, and she was wheelchair bound, and that was, I suppose,
Yeah.
that has shaped how I would understand what MS is. But
Mhm.
as you said, it's a spectrum, and there are so many different levels and experiences of it.
Yeah, I met a man once years ago, and his MS was quite progressed. He could still walk, but he was like using a walker and stuff. And he asked me like, "Do I walk a lot and do I go for walks?" And I said, "Yeah, sometimes." And he said, "Walk while you still can, and just keep walking." And it was pure love, and there was there was nothing. It was just lovely. It was a lovely interaction.
I think definitely meeting other people who have lived through it and getting to hear their advice, because someone who lives through what you're experiencing will only kind of have love for you, because they will probably have an understanding of what your future possibly could be and what you're going through in the present moment. So I definitely think that's advice I would ever give to anyone. Maybe from my own perspective, is reaching out to the people who you see maybe online to ask about how they're getting on, or maybe meeting people in person. I know with Crohn's Colitis Ireland there are support groups, and there's a helpline you can reach out to. When it comes to MS, is there a society foundation where people can go looking for information?
Yes, so there's MS Ireland. That's kind of the main one in Ireland. There's other different groups. I suppose it depends where you live. But I think the one bit of advice I'd give to somebody is MS is the least most interesting part of you. There's way more interesting parts of you than MS.
I think we are not, no matter what the disease is, we are not the disease. We are us. We're the human being behind the label,
Mhm.
and that's just a beautiful piece of advice. When it living with chronic illness can suck the life out of you at times, and like the search for happiness is an everyday thing. Where we all want to be happy. We all want to have a good life. Living with what you're living with at the minute, what does happiness look like for you?
Happiness is, and I'm about to get married. I'm getting married
Congratulations.
in 5 weeks. So I've just bought an apartment with my girlfriend. This is happiness at the moment. And my health is probably the best it's been in a while. I'm happy in my job. This is happiness. Like just simple, peaceful, stable, health wise. This is happiness at the moment.
That is a powerful, beautiful statement, and to have the presence and know that you're in happiness, because I know we can live life thinking of the future all the time, and we never take a moment to say, things are actually in a good spell at the minute. But I'm delighted for you. A wedding and an apartment bought. Look at you.
Yeah. Wouldn't have thought that when we were doing Robert Chambers, would you?
For a bit of context, myself and Louise actually met probably 10 years ago now. At this stage, we both trained to be
I
hairdressers
think it
together.
was more than that.
It's kind of scary to think about, isn't it? Like, but our lives have changed a lot since then.
We've lived many lives since then.
So, just as a final thought, like you've shared some amazing information there, and it's great to see how resilient you are, and like how people can look up to you and see that getting a diagnosis isn't the end of the world. Your life can go on, and you can have a very good life as well with it. So, just to recap on everything, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I just think, there is going to be hard times with whatever illness you have, but you need to know that the light is at the end of the tunnel and things do change and things do get better one way or another. And you might not see the light yet, but it's definitely coming.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like we can be in darkness, I suppose, and it's very hard to see the light when things can be so encompassing and take over your whole life. Like health does
Yeah.
take over your whole life, and sometimes
Yeah.
like, the light ain't shining when you're really in it. Like, but
Mhm.
I think once you just persevere and remember that you are not this illness, you are exactly
Yeah.
what your reaction to the illness is going to be, and that's what's going to guide the rest of your life. So, no, that's beautiful. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
It was episode 5, Survival Project. Massive thank you to Louise for coming on and sharing her story. I know it's going to be a massive help to other people who could possibly be navigating an MS diagnosis, and just the tips and tricks for just dealing with chronic illness on a daily basis. She has great insight and some really, really good tips for dealing with the mental and the physical symptoms. If you're still here, thank you so much for sticking with us. This podcast is obviously in early days, and the only way to get it to actually progress a little bit further and reach more eyes is likes, shares, comments. I'm always begging for people to help me out here. The more we interact with the post, the more that the podcast get pushed out in the algorithm, which will then, of course, help the podcast to grow. So I'd really appreciate any support you can help in that sense. More guests lined up for the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned. I have another episode coming next week.